And we're live. You know, if it isn't a Duncan, it isn't a yo-yo.
Yeah, you're probably right.
It doesn't light up.
It's coming apart. So that's our fun way to introduce the first part of our exciting and informative video about the swag we got at the NASCC. Although this is not what this video is about, so don't just turn it off because you think we're talking about stuff. We are talking about stuff, but just as a aside. So it seems like you're coming in the lead on the pen collection competition.
I do.
You're in.
I am at 10 pens at the moment.
10 pens.
I am the leader.
2 of which, for some reason, have
bubble levels.
Bubble levels in them.
Can't argue that.
Yeah. So
I leveled the camera.
Yeah. So if you ever are writing and need to know if you're level, you're good. But I, however, am winning the swag competition. I got this nifty little can opener from Nucor. You know, we've all got 1,000 of those. But from Industry Lift, which we'll talk about, I got this sweet Google Glasses or Google Cardboard interface, and you pop it out and you attach your phone in here, and it magnifies it and turns it into an augmented reality headset, which is pretty cool. So we'll talk a little bit about Industry Lift and about our sessions this morning. So we woke up this morning. We had actually we should talk a little bit about last night. We had our event with other SDS2 users at the Over Under Bar and Grill.
You remember last night?
I remember most of last night. Yeah, there was Jack and Coke.
Jack and Coke was flowing.
Yeah, everybody in the room was Jack Daniel's drinkers, and not by design. It just happened.
I heard one was Crown and Coke.
Okay, so apparently Jack Daniel's the official drink of SDS2 users everywhere.
I think all detailers need to drink something.
Yeah. That might be the thing. But we talked a lot. Steph from SDS2 was there. We talked a lot about the kind of future of SDS2, what we see, what concerns we have as far as being outpaced on innovation. That was kind of one of the things that we worried about a lot. But we also talked just a little bit about I spoke a lot with David Hennegar. David Hennegar, for those of you who may not know, he has what's called a site license, which basically means that way back when, with SDS2, it was, 20 years now, you think?
Way longer.
Way longer. Like in the 80s.
He's in the 80s with that, I believe.
He basically wrote a big check to SDS2 and said, I want unlimited licenses forever. And now he has that, which is pretty amazing. It's got to be a pretty great boon to him. But he's doing a lot of offshoring in interesting ways. They're doing what's called Chase the Sun detailing.
Follow the sun.
Follow the sun.
Follow the sun model. Yeah.
Right. Where you're constantly in every different time zone somebody's modeling and making full use of those stations, which I always have reservations about offshoring work. I think it's not necessarily competitively what's the word, ethical, but I mean, it is a reality that we have to kind of face in our situation. So we got a comment from Corey, and he says the best detailers drink. It's how they cope with the poor drawings. And I don't think there's enough liquor in the world that can deal with the RFIs. I mean, imagine if you took a shot for every time you wrote an RFI, the type of contract or detail drawings that we got. They'd probably end up looking like the design drawings.
I have been guilty of deciding that I needed a drink in order to bring these contract drawings into focus, and it helps because if you're a little messed up, then you start to kind of see what the design team was thinking. Now you don't remember it later because you really got to get hammered for that. But,
yeah.
You have that moment of, oh, it all makes sense. And then you sober up and you realize nothing's going to work.
Yeah. So it was a good event. We were late to our own event, which was kind of amusing. But that took us late to the night. It was about 11:30 when we got home.
11:30, yeah.
Early start for the 8 o'clock sessions this morning. What was your first session?
See, my first session, I know it was with Brian Cobb, and it was about detailers. And I did stream it live.
Training?
Yes, it was about training, how to train your detailers.
There. Okay, so
yeah, but you picked it.
what's the summary?
So there was really my big takeaway was the way that he trains his detailers and how he picks a candidate for a new hire to begin with. And this is something that we've struggled with for a long time. Is you don't there's a labor shortage. Plain and simple, there's a labor shortage.
Right.
Finding a skilled detailer is hard. Anyone that is a fully trained, fully realized detailer is well employed or he's running his own business. So, finding somebody that's a good candidate to be a detailer is hard. And there's a lot of different ways, excuse me, you can go about it. What we try to do, and this is one of the ways that he brought up, is, you hire people out of high school, out of college. They have computer experience, but they have no construction experience. And the challenge is you now have to teach them detailing, but you have to split that up between the construction side and the software side. And it's hard to overwhelm somebody with all of that information. And his approach is he tries to find people that are experienced in construction. So they're field guys and they're sick of being in the field. They want to get in and do, something in the office side. They want to get into detailing. And they're going to bring that level of, how do you put this together? They understand really what the drawings are trying to tell you as far as what this is going to look like when you erect it.
Right.
What are the challenges you're going to face there? Because that's something that's really hard to teach somebody that's never seen it in person. You can teach them how to take what you see in the contract drawings and then make that in the model, but that's not how it's going to go together. You have to figure out, which way can I swing this beam in?
Right.
How is this all going to actually go together? And that's something that having that field experience gives them. They've seen it go wrong. They already have that experience. Now you're just teaching them, how to take drawings that they've already seen drawings too.
Right.
So they know how to read a print, they know how to put it together, and now you're just showing them how to make that drawing from crappier drawings, basically. And that's something that I kind of liked his take on it. Now he also will go on to say it's hard to find those people too, but when you find those, you get more out of it.
Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned that he looks for people with computer experience, but last night when we were talking to David Hennegar, he said he doesn't care about anything except he looks to people who have been in the field, so that they've got that 3D spatial awareness. And you could go either way with it because 3D spatial awareness is, especially with younger detailers, kind of something that they come built in with because of video games, right? Like you have that experience where you're sitting in a 3D world that's been created around you, so you get a lot of that spatial awareness. It's one of the things that's actually good about this generation is they're familiar with a 3D world that's being generated around them. So that's really nice.
That was one of his things too, and he specifically said gamers. Go out and find gamers and teach them the whole thing.
Yeah.
One of the things though that I did like, and we'll get into ourselves privately later, is he calls it a lunch and learn. So basically, on the lunch break, he will do some teaching to help kind of advance people. Because one of our challenges is if I want to train somebody, I have to stop being productive.
Right.
I have to stop making money and making things happen, and then teach somebody who is not going to make things happen yet. So I'm paying this person who's not being productive. Now I'm paying myself and I'm not being productive. So, that little way every day you get 20, 30 minutes in, if you tack it in at the end of lunch or something like that, and you just get that little bit of extra training. So every day they inch a little bit more forward and they can be a little bit more useful and productive the next day. Yeah,
it's funny you mentioned that because that same exact topic came up in our session, my second session. I won't switch too much, but he said this thing, they said the same thing. You have to invest in training. You have to think about it as detailers, as this is just a part of your costs. You can't just push it off. And we've seen that, a lot of detailing companies, they don't want to train people, they don't spend time on it. So they just, I don't have any detailers. Where can I find detailers? Well, if you can't find them, you got to go make them. And that's it. And even if you found great detailers, if they're a great detailer today and they don't improve in 5 years, they're a lousy detailer. And for us, that's not acceptable.
Right. And, that was something else that he made mention of. Somebody had asked specifically, what is your window to decide that a detailer is not going to work out? And he said 3 years, and when I came up and you came up too, that was sort of the thing that we were always told is it takes 3 years for you to be worth the pay.
Yeah.
And that's a long time to pay somebody and get very little out of them.
Yeah.
But it's the cost of it,
Well, and I think
Cost
some
of
of
doing
that
business.
training time is probably reduced with modularization of detailing, where you can take somebody, put them in drawing editor. They're not responsible for the model. They don't have to have all of that depth of critical thinking that you need, to be a fully developed detailer. But they can still be functional. So I guess 3 years is probably a good time to say, okay, they're functional. They can kind of get into a job on their own. But they can be productive much earlier now, especially with stuff like drawing editor, which is kind of I don't want to say risk free, but risk light.
Yeah, and that's, he talked about what he does is, everybody learns how to do everything. He doesn't have modelers and scrubbers. And, I heard that, it kind of stunned me for a moment because we hired somebody, it was our first hire, and we threw him into everything. We said, you're going to do this job beginning to end. We're going to walk you through it. And it was the single greatest disaster project we've ever had. We wound up losing a customer over it. It was bad.
Right.
And from then on, it was we are assembly lining this. If you know how to do everything, which is us, fine. We do everything. But anyone else we bring in, you are either going to learn the drawing editor or you are going to learn the model, and we are going to build from there. You're never going to get thrown into everything. But what you do is, you're going to start out scrubbing member details. Simple member details.
Yeah.
You're going to do filler beams until you want to die. Then we'll add in spandrel beams. Then we'll add in columns and vertical braces. We build you up slow. Once you've had experience doing all of that, you start doing plans and sections. Then and only then, when you can do all of that, will we let you touch a model where you can do serious damage.
Right. And even then, once we put somebody into a model, it's do this specific task 100 times. We'll show you how to do it once. Now go do it 99 more times, as opposed to just model this building. It's not like that. It's
Right.
much more repetitive. And then eventually we put all those things together, but we don't try to do it, over the course of a month. There's just
No.
way. So
No, it's got to be a gradual process that you build them up slowly, And it's also hard. This is something that we've struggled with is when you want to hire somebody and they're not already a skilled detailer, they have already invested a fair chunk of their life in another trade or profession along the way.
Mm-hmm.
They are now supporting a family. They are now making money at the level, but now they want to change over and become a detailer. Realistically, as far as we're concerned, you need to go back to the bottom as far as the pay scale goes, because you're not making us any money. But we're not going to get you to join and start working unless we pay you basically what somebody should be making if they were productive at your level of experience. And so it becomes a challenge of, we're going to have to come up with this extra money. We're going to take a hit until you become worthwhile. You're really going to be a pain. You're really going to be detrimental to our profit margins, which are already thin enough to have to pay you in excess of what you're worth just to try to train you. And then if you don't work out, we start the whole process over and take the loss and start with another person. So you really have to vet that candidate first and make sure they're a good fit for everything else before you even think about trying to teach them the actual construction and detailing industry.
Yeah. And then, as a detailer, you always got to be looking for ways to add value to yourself, to make yourself more useful. Whether, becoming a part of the community, figuring out how can we improve the BIM process, how could I make this review process easier. All those things are things that you really got to be looking at if you want to take the next step from being a detailer to kind of being a player in the industry. Right. So that was the training session. Should we go to your next session next, or should we do my first session?
You know what? I don't really know what my next session is because it's on the phone.
No. I'm saying the session. You had two sessions this morning.
Oh, okay. So what's the next session I did? It was also about detailing.
It's not that
yesterday.
anymore?
Yesterday was all legal, and
Right.
today is all detailing, and so those two kind of blurred together because they were largely about training detailers. You know what? Talk about yours while I think about what I knew what the name of mine was.
All right, so my first session was about, it was called Kink Connection, What Is It and Why Should I Care? And what I expected when I went into the meeting was to talk about, kinked connections, where there's a broken back beam or something similar. It was not at all that. It was much more about talking about alternative load paths and the paths that that loads take through members as a part of connection design. And it turned out to be really interesting, and there was a lot of critical thinking that kind of added into my head. One of the problems that I had, though, is at the end of it, I went up to the presenter and I said, hey, is there a guiding document on this that says, all right, here's the things that you should look for with, when you're looking at a building to really identify what these alternative load paths are. And he was like, beyond the PowerPoint that I just put up for you, no, there isn't one of those things. And that's one of those places where these conferences can be a little bit obnoxious, is you take in all this information, you try to take notes as best as possible, you learn something, but I want to take that information, I want to convey it down. And without this medium of being able to present it in a video format, which I couldn't stream it, I didn't have the right equipment at the time, is difficult. But a lot of it about what it talked about is things like, you've got a hanger connection. Well, if you put a hanger and it's eccentric to the web, then you are introducing a secondary load. And then you have to deal with that. You have to make sure that gets passed through other members or through the flanges, through stiffeners or whatever else into, a section that can actually handle it and deal with that mode. One of the things they talk about a lot, and this was a common thing in another conference, is with hangers. If you hang something from a tube, you really shouldn't hang something from the center of the tube, because the section modulus is in this direction, which is the weak axis. What you want to do is find a way to take that load and pass it out to the two sides of the tube, which is something that I don't think we think about enough, about making sure that our hangers are, where we're putting stiffeners, and making sure that everything is kind of equal, symmetrical, to make sure that those paths, that those loads make it all the way through the members and are transferred properly. And it really should be our responsibility as detailers to be concerned about those load paths. But the reality of it is, if we're not thinking about it, probably nobody's thinking about it. Of course, there are progressive engineers who are really doing their work, but as we all know, they are few and far between. And it is, to some degree, our ethical responsibility to make sure that these things are being taken care of to the best of our ability. So that was super interesting. I did take some notes, and I'd like to do a more complete presentation on that. One of the things I always worry about when we're presenting these things is that we're not, registered licensed engineers. So I don't want to say the wrong thing and end up in trouble. And no amount of disclaimers that you say can really kind of justify that somebody takes information that you say and it's wrong. But also, you can't spend your life worrying about that stuff. Otherwise, you'll never really say anything.
Yeah. Well, also, it's nice to be judgment proof sometimes, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I was that way in my marriage.
All right. So the other one that I did, and the reason that they kind of ran together was they were both in the same room and they both had to do with detailing.
Mine were both in the same room too, although mine completely separate subject. But yeah, for once.
So the other one that I did was detailing. It's not just that anymore, and it talked about all of the additional responsibilities that have started to fall on detailers. It's our job to help. We do estimating. We do the mill orders, we do the actual details, which is the only part of this that's really our job. We have to tackle the CNC, if there's an issue with the CNC software in the shop, even though we're the subcontract detailer, the customer is going to look to us to say, well, why don't these work? All I do is hit a button. I've got software that makes files come out. You do something with it. I don't know, I don't care, but it falls on us because we're the point of release for those details, so they need that information.
That actually reminds me of a session I went to yesterday, which I did stream. It's up there. It was what erectors hate or love to hate about detailers. And one of the things he presented was, all right, we've got these beams which are meant to go around an HVAC opening. And, the detailer didn't get the information on it, so we put those beams on hold. Well, as a result of that, when I went to go erect that building, I didn't have those beams. And he says, don't don't put those beams on hold. Instead, take it to the project manager and say, hey, here's a proposal for us to field drill those pieces instead. And I kind of took exception to that. I didn't really think that made a lot of sense. First, because we're taking enough on as detailers. The project management is really like it just can't be on us. When we send an RFI and say, hey, we need this information and we're placing these members on hold, that's kind of it. We can follow up on it. That's to some degree our responsibility to follow up and make sure that stuff gets taken care of. But even when we do that, a lot of times it doesn't happen. And in that case, I'm not going to take those members off hold and allow something to get field drilled, because 9 times out of 10, I'm going to get chewed out by the fabricator when those are wrong. And then they're going to be looking to pass that change order or that back charge on to me. And the one thing that I would say that I learned from it that I'll try to do better is to just, hey, present that as an option. It might be cheaper rather than leaving these on hold forever for us to field operate or field drill those holes later. And he did say that. He said, if you present it to them in this way. But, with the timelines and the way things are going, a lot of times it's just too much to handle in the time that we have. So.
Well, to piggyback off that, it's interesting because if you go to a bunch of these sessions, you will hear a lot of conflicting information. Because,
yes, you will.
And the one thing that I did pick up was it varies state to state, and I think that's where a lot of this conflict comes from. Because what you're talking about is, we can suggest this. We can. So what I got out of mine was, don't suggest things, because if you suggest it, even if the EOR agrees with it and signs off on it, if it doesn't work, you can be held liable for that design at that point. So whatever state
I think that's lazy, though.
It's absolutely lazy.
Yeah,
but he's run into it. He had actually seen that, so that's where he had that. Because we were all dubious of that. We were like,
right.
Really?
You can't go through life like that, because you'll never get a project finished. Like if all you ever worry about is the liability behind things.
Exactly. It's not worth doing. If you can't take on some of the risk, then you don't get any of the reward. And that's kind of part of it. Is if you're expected to be a project manager, to be an estimator, to be dealing with all these things that aren't the detailer's responsibility, then build it into your price, but you're still going to have to do it.
Yeah.
And that's just part of the negotiation of the contract to begin with. Is as you build that relationship with a customer, is to determine what it is they're going to expect from you, and let them know and make sure it's part of your negotiation that if they're going to expect more of what should be their responsibilities being placed on you, then you're going to need a bigger piece of that pie.
Yeah. The problem that we face with that is that the customer will almost always say, oh, I don't need that. And then later they still want it. And again, it's just tough. There's a lot of that back and forth between the two different camps. The same thing falls in with BIM about people not wanting to take on liability.
So he actually had everyone use a show of hands. Who here has sat in on a BIM meeting?
Right.
Now, while their hands are still up, he says, who here has sat in on a productive BIM meeting?
Yeah.
All hands go down. It's like, yep, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
And, and he discussed, he'd done a BIM job, and 2 hours out of every week, it was every Monday morning, 2 hours, he would have to be in a video conference call with all the other trades, and they would all discuss things, what's the problem right now. And he said, I never gave any input. Nothing ever had to do with me. So I answered emails and did my regular work during this.
You're just sitting there.
There was nothing at all for me to do, but I had to show up.
It's like a Michael Scott conference room meeting.
Yeah, you're just Stanley in the back doing your crosswords.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the second session I went to actually was the one that I was most excited about talking on the channel about. It was presumptively it was called how to be a better software user, what your software company wants you to know to make you a better user. Actually, what it turned into a lot of was basically how the heck can we move forward in the BIM environment and actually make model review and model round tripping a thing, so that we're not still doing this kind of paper drawing review process. And A lot of good questions. A couple of them came from Chris Kiak. He used to be an SDS detailer. Now he's in the Tekla world. But he was talking a lot about how do we take and get the information to them in a way that they're actually going to digest it, actually going to transform it. And this is something that I deal with a lot with model checking. Is people talk about the model as if all of the information is visible in the model. Yes, I can see whether stuff fits. I can see, if it's in roughly the right place, but it's actually not a great medium for presenting information as far as, is this the difference between a 4x4 by quarter angle, a 4x4 by 3/8 angle, one that's 10 foot down and one that's 10 foot 1 3/8 inch down. That information is not clearly presented in a model. Now, if you've got a complete building model, that's not as much of an issue because you can see, okay, the pour stop ends where the CMU starts. That's fine. But a lot of times we don't have that. One of the questions that I had asked the presenters is, how do we, is there an iterative step that we're taking between model review and PDF review? Is there a way to increase the amount of metadata that's being put into those PDFs so that those PDFs become a little bit more intelligent? They include links to models, they include, piece mark information, they include all of those, if you click on the piece mark on the plan, it should really take you to the detail for that piece mark and back and forth. So a lot of that stuff, and the answer is, to are you doing that was, well, we're kind of trying, particularly SDS2. Doug Evans was there for SDS2. And he said, we've got a partnership with Review or with Bluebeam, and we're trying to do that stuff, which my only honest answer to that is it doesn't look like it. They've been strategic partners with Bluebeam for 5 years now. And the best thing that we've seen come out of it is, one, they changed their default font, so now it's a searchable font. They switched it to Homa from the SDS2 font, so you could search for it in Bluebeam. And the other thing, which we really like, but is not really, game changing, is that now when you export a PDF, you get bookmarks included in it, so you can go to 8B5 just by clicking on the bookmark for it. And while that is great, it's still got a long way to go.
That reminds me, while I was talking with Ryan Bannock from SDS, we got on a subject of how we were getting into looking at 2019. What was that one thing that Steph had showed you that you just stop everything? What? You were so excited. It was one little feature.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a feature. It was in the release notes. It was making the member edit window smaller. Yes. They deleted a bunch of white space in it. And I was excited about it because they deleted some white space, but then she opened it up, and yes, it was small, but it was still too freaking big. There's still all sorts of wasted space in there. So I was both excited by it and a little bit disappointed by it. Let's see, hold on. I don't know who it is. Got a phone call coming in. So, but that was really interesting. It's funny because you get 3 panelists. One was from Autodesk, Ian Coates. One, like I said, was from SDS2, that was Doug Evans, and another was Mark Alpin from Trimble. One of the questions that they had, it was kind of a conversation with the audience. What the audience member said was, what's a productive way or a good way for us to kind of keep up on all these updates? And that's something that, we've tried to address through our videos, is giving people little chunks of, hey, here's something new, in a way that's digestible. Because SDS2 kind of really struggles with getting that information out in a way that people are actually going to take it in. The release notes are okay, but they're not terribly a sentence about a new feature does not really convey how that's useful or how it's going to make make your day a little bit better.
Right, and they've got limited resources as far as getting the help file caught up too, and there's just so much there that, we complain about it, and rightfully so. It should be better, but the reality is there's only so much time that can be spent on it, and it does take a certain amount of time. So,
well, I would argue that that may be true if you're looking at it we need to generate X percentage of profit, but if your goal is to produce the best software, and then you will get the best profit, I would argue they're moving a little bit in the wrong direction there.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, like I said, it's not an excuse. It's just that's the reason. But it is something I wish they would address, and it does need to be beefed up and completed and maintained as the features come out, we need a complete documentation to go along with it.
The help file is the erection drawing of software. It's the rest of it is useless.
I like that.
If the help file is not complete, I don't know where to put it. I don't know what button to press, especially with software as complicated as all of these 3D modeling interfaces is. And I talked to Mark Alpin from Trimble about that same scenario, about how we, what we do. And he said they have something called Minute Mondays, where they do a 1 minute video every Monday about a new feature, a new thing. And I think that's a great look. I haven't seen the videos themselves, but that's one of the ways that needs to be presented. Here's a short chunk of a video about how to make your life a little bit better. And yeah, maybe you won't use this feature, but knowing that it's there is going to make you a better detailer.
Yeah. I think that's something that, we've already kind of started down that road, but not quite so, structured, not so regular. But I think that that's something that we do need to get into doing more of, is more of those little tutorials, little tips and tricks, things like that, to kind of show users, how you can get the most out of your software, so that you're, really making the most out of your time.
Yeah, and we worry a lot about editing and trying to make things look nice, so that they're, so that you want to watch them, so that our users want to watch them. But if anything, our live videos are kind of an indication that people are looking for information, and sometimes, to some degree, they're willing to accept the fact that we're sitting in a crappy loft apartment in front of a smartphone on a tripod, and as long as they're getting the information they need to be better, they'll take it. But we do try to make it also a pleasant experience, and that's just like in SDS2, we complain about the dialog boxes are ugly or whatever else. That experience being pleasant makes your day a little bit easier. We want the same thing for our videos. So another thing that happened for us today that was outside of a session, I visited with Bill Isler. For anybody who may not know, Bill Isler is the kind of the granddad at this point of detailing software. Way back in the same days that SDS2 was coming up, and that not even Tekla wasn't even around yet. He produced a software called Fabricad, which is the first one to try and make its way into 3D modeling. Anyways, he was the founder of FabSuite, which has now been sold to Trimble. So I assume he got a whole chunk of money from that, and now he's trying to take that money and make the industry a little bit better. So he had a booth. It's called, like I said, Industry Lift. And the whole goal of it is to try and bring young people into the steel industry, whether it's as detailers, erectors, whether it's engineers, to try and connect them with the steel industry and get them interested in it. So he had that's actually where I got this Google Glass. It's from Industry Lift, and his premise and what he's looking to do is kind of get into educational institutions early, as the high school stage. But honestly, to recruit detailers, if you're in the college stage, it's too late. Right?
You've already missed the boat.
Yeah, because most people who are going in for a college degree have a career in mind, or are going for those things. The ones that we still get outside of college is because they couldn't find the job that they wanted.
Right. Right. They got sold. Their guidance counselor said, I know a field for you, and it's the same field I give to everyone.
Right.
But that was exactly what got me into detailing in the first place. Is like so many people in the late 90s, you need to be a software engineer. The .com bubble is never going away. You are going to make $100,000 right out of college. Oh, sign me up.
Right.
And whew, man, I didn't get far.
Yeah.
So, you got to look for people that have been sold a career that everybody else has been sold, and therefore there's a glut of
super oversaturated.
Yeah, it's just a saturated market. There's everybody that's hiring has already got everyone they need for that.
But I actually think there is hope for the detailing industry, because this generation, the people that are having kids now, those late Xers and early millennials, did experience that kind of fallback from everybody now has a college degree, so my college degree is useless, and I probably didn't need it in the first place. So many more people are making their kids, I know you are, and I am, aware of the fact that college is not the right path for everybody, and there are other great careers, one of which is detailing, that you don't need a degree for. You don't need to spend, the first 6 or 8 years of your life, of your adult life, learning to do something. You could.
And then the next 15 paying off.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't make the mistake you did. Like, I got into detailing immediately out of high school, and by the time my friends were coming out of college, I already owned my house. And it was a whole different experience for them. And actually there were some social divides there because I was just at a different point in adulthood at the point that they came out. So he's doing some exciting things. If you have a chance, check out his website. I believe it's industrylift.com, but I'll check it out. I'll try and get it in the comments. But he's doing some cool stuff. If you happen to be part of an educational organization, you want to help him out, go ahead and reach out to them. So I also talked to the guys over at Autodesk. I set up with them a presentation for tomorrow. We're going to try and record a little bit on what Autodesk and Advanced Steel are putting together for this coming year. So we know, obviously, we're SDS2 users, so we focus a lot on that. But there's a lot of tools in this trade, and there's a lot of them that are useful, especially something like Advanced Steel, where it's not necessarily a budget breaker. So when you need it, having that extra tool in your box can be really helpful.
Right.
And some detailers are actually pretty bad about in general is investing in getting the right tools.
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean the number of detailers that we know that they bought AutoCAD in 2000. They bought it, they own it forever, and they're never going to pay another dime for it. And they're still using Autodesk 2000, 2006, right. Something like that.
Well, and they always think they're the smartest people in the world, as if like nobody else had ever thought of buying software and then just keeping it and using it as it was. It's
right.
Like, well, yeah, but we've got steam shovels now. We don't.
Right. Do you think I would pay what I've paid for SDS and then keep paying the annual bill if I wasn't getting anything out of it?
Right.
No, I don't just feel like throwing my money away. If I don't see a value coming out, I'm not going to keep going with it.
Right. 2019 is actually a great example of that because people are like, oh, I'm still using version 7.3 for reasons. And if you go into 2019 and you see the, what do they call it? The blow up tool.
The magnifier.
The magnifier, which is a stupid name. I don't know why they called it a magnifier. Nobody calls it a magnifier.
We'll always call it the blow up tool.
Right, it's a blow up tool. That's what it is, right? But it's something that we've needed so long, and in a single project, especially a stair project, you can pay for that software update for the whole year on a single project of increased productivity with a tool like that.
Yeah, I mean, we've got one now that we've almost got it modeled, and it's in 2018. We were watching the demo for 2019, and I was watching that blow up tool. I was like, man, if I had this in that right now, all of these sections that I just had to sit here and cut and redetail one at a friggin' time, that would have made it for me right there.
Yeah, and that's something that I've always been a little frustrated with SDS2 about, is how terrifying and unreliable it can be. And maybe it's not anymore. Maybe it just was at one point, and now we're burned by it. To bring a project forward from an older version of SDS2 into a newer one, we usually try to, if we're jumping versions, start a new project in there.
Right. Yeah. It's. I know that bringing something forward from as far back as 7.3 is not the brightest idea.
Obviously, but like from 2018-13 up to 2019-02, do we still face that problem, or is it going to be okay?
Yeah, I don't know. We haven't tested it, and I don't want to put the money on the line to find out.
Right.
And it's
right. And sometimes you'll ask people, and they'll give you a probably, and it's like, well, no.
Probably might be. I'm going to lose a customer and maybe a whole big back charge over that. So but it's something that I would like to try it with a job that is completed, is to bring it forward as a test and then hit the button, redetail everything over again, and just see what it looks like. Process it, mark the whole job for processing, mess with some things, and then redetail it and see if it still comes out okay. See if it is, worthwhile to bring it forward. But again, that's a certain amount of testing and whatnot that's just to satisfy my morbid curiosity is probably not worth my time.
Right.
But somebody that hasn't had the fantastic experience of being handed a previously fired SDS detailer 7.3 model and say, oh, I've got the model, you can take it and finish this job now, right?
Yeah.
Oh, let me just bring that forward and see what happens. And then you nuke everything, you know.
That actually reminds me of something that I thought about or talked about at my second session, which was the one with the software people. Was right now the first thing that we do when we get an engineering model is throw it out, and it's largely because they're bad. But if there was a way for us to not just throw it out, but to correct it, and then know that that information filtered its way back through to the other people in the trades, that would be something that I would invest the time in to make sure that, you know, hey, my model does match theirs and it's still accurate, as opposed to just throwing it out. But that iteration, that workflow doesn't exist right now. There's no real cross flow of information between these models.
Right.
And there's no way to link version X. You know, there's GUI IDs, which if you've ever done a BIM job, you know all about GUI IDs. And those do tie one model to the other, but they're not intelligent. So if you have the same, you know, the same GUI ID twice, as far as I know, those are just going to clash and not generate. So if you create a new model object, then all of that information that was in the old one is lost, and that's kind of a shame, because it would be nice to say, hey, you know, we understand that you didn't really care that this column was exactly placed where it needs to be. We fixed it for you, and here, just run this and it'll update your model with this as well as all the other connection information. That would be really nice. But that didn't happen. So tonight we've got the NASCC dinner at the Budweiser Brewery, which of course will be a quiet and relaxed affair. There won't be any shenanigans there. Also, we've got at 5 o'clock, we've got a happy hour with the folks from SDS2. We'll you know, try to pin them down and hit them over the head with whatever we can. It's
you know, we I don't know that I want to say this now, but I'm going to do it anyway. We should try to go live during those and then see if we can't get one of them and put them in the hot seat and just sort of grill them with some questions.
We're not gonna. Maybe we will.
Maybe we will.
It's to the point where we turn the corner and I see Steph just go. Let me try and get away from these guys before they try and record what we're doing. But you know, we come in peace. We come as friends. Our goal really is to make the software better and to try
and be ball busters.
And there's to some degree, while the employee might not do, and that's the problem. It's just like when you go into a retail store and their return policy sucks. It's not the person at the desk's fault that their return policy sucks.
Right.
So
they're just the one you get to yell at.
Right. So I could see to some degree SDS2 people when they're at those happy hours drinking the pain away when they're sitting next to a user who's just
Matt sat down and yelled at me for like 30 minutes about the license. I'm sorry, Matt. I didn't write it.
Flex LM is a total joke piece of software and should have been abandoned 10 years ago. That's it. So on that note, we're going to wrap up. If you guys have questions, you want to see anything, please let us know down in those comments, or you got our email address. Reach out, let us know what you need, and we'll see you back here on the Steel Forum.